Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Andrew Gaffney. I'm publisher of Demand Gen Report, and I'd like to welcome you to the next session in the Lead Lifecycle Series. We've talked a lot in the first few sessions in the series about the importance of measuring marketing at different stages of the funnel to learn about buyer behavior. The limitation with a lot of that measurement is it looks backwards at past behaviors. The next session in the series, the evolution of lead scoring from rules-based to predictive, is going to look at the emerging practice of using predictive marketing to better identify likely buyers. And we're going to hear a great case study on how DocuSign has used predictive scoring to increase conversion rates of opportunities to close one by over 30%. Before we get started with the session, I want to cover some housekeeping items and frequently asked questions. Today's presentation is slated for approximately 30 minutes, and then we'll have save some time for Q&A. For today's presentation, we are using the On24 platform. Please use the Q&A box to the right, and you can submit questions. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can at the end of the webinar. If we don't get a chance to address your question on the live webinar, we'll plan to ask our speakers to follow up with you directly after the broadcast. Also, today's session is being recorded, and a link to the archived recording will be sent to all registrants, so you can go back and review or share it with your peers. We're also trying to extend the conversation of lead lifecycle optimization across all channels and trying to extend the conversation on social. So we want to encourage you to tweet and share any relevant comments and questions that you have on LinkedIn and other social channels. We welcome you to share your thoughts and perspectives on today's webinar using the Twitter hashtag LLCseries. There are some additional Twitter handles on the screen that you can use and follow as well. To reward our most active participants, all registrants will be eligible for winners of our prize box. It's pretty simple. Once you register for the series and you attend sessions and get engaged by sharing, you'll increase your chances of winning some of the great prizes that we've got. I mentioned the Lead Lifecycle Series is being hosted by Demand Gen Report. For those of you who may not be familiar with Demand Gen Report, we launched in 2007 and have been a resource for B2B marketers as we track best practices in sales and marketing, lead generation, lead nurturing. We offer daily news items on our site as well as a wide selection of research and best practices reports. Our weekly newsletter has grown to more than 28,000 readers, and if you're not currently one of them, we welcome you to go ahead and sign up for free at demandgenreport.com. Also, if you have any feedback, questions, story ideas, please engage with us at our social group. We're on LinkedIn, which is DG Specialists. So let's go ahead and get started with today's session. We've got two great speakers. I want to introduce you to them now. We're going to hear first from Brian Carden. Brian is the CMO at Lattice Engines. Brian's somebody that we've worked closely with at the Demand Gen Report for a number of years now, and is a great, insightful person on the industry. Brian is responsible for Lattice's market positioning, demand generation, thought leadership, and integrated marketing. Prior to Lattice, Brian was the CMO, and the driving force behind Eloqua's explosive growth in the revenue performance management sector. Brian was recently named a top 10 global CMO for companies under $250 million in revenue by the CMO Institute. He's also been named a top 10 CMO on Twitter by Social Media Marketing Magazine. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
And then we're also going to hear from Ryan Schwartz. Ryan's going to present some examples of what they've done at DocuSign. Ryan is the Director of Marketing Systems and Operations at DocuSign. Ryan's a web and marketing technology enthusiast with expertise in marketing automation systems, advanced web development methodologies, and cross-platform system integration. He has a deep background in managing marketing automation platforms for enterprise organizations. In his current role at DocuSign, which is a global standard for digital transaction management, he manages the marketing systems team and is also responsible for developing a marketing framework for campaign automation, execution, and analysis. So we welcome Ryan, and I'll turn it over to Brian to get us started.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. It's great to be here with you, Andrew, and it's really terrific to be with my friend Ryan, who is doing amazing things in marketing at DocuSign. DocuSign is really a company to watch. If you're a marketer and you want to observe great marketing in action, take a look at what Ryan's doing, and he'll be on in about 10 minutes. I'm going to give a little overview of predictive analytics, what Andrew talked about. I first want to say that this world of predictive analytics is all around you today, but you may not see it. So, for example, in healthcare, predictive analytics determines which patients are at risk of developing certain conditions. So they look across millions of patients, and they look at cholesterol levels and glucose and family history, and they can determine what diseases people may develop. It's used for credit card companies in fraud detection, which transactions are most likely to be fraudulent, and it uses pattern detection for that. It's used in online retailing. Which book or movie recommendation is most likely to result in an incremental purchase. I have a friend who runs a group at Comcast, and their job, and this is not a great job, her job is to, when people call in and they're complaining and they want to unsubscribe, she offers them an incentive to not unsubscribe. And so I asked her, do you give $20 off or a free month? She said, we have a predictive analytics engine that tells us what to offer. It could be, if you're a sports fan, 2 months of a sports package. It could be free HBO. It could be a month free, $20 off. So they're using big data and predictive analytics there. So it's a very exciting field, and it's now being applied to marketing. And I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about that. So this is who I am. Andrew said, I'm at Lattice Engines, and prior to that, I was at Eloqua for about 5 years. And I felt that I really had a front seat at this amazing revolution in marketing, from analog to digital, from outbound to inbound, social media, content marketing, analytics, and so I wanted to sort of find the next new exciting frontier for marketing, and that's why I'm here at Lattice. And before that, I was at Forrester Research as CMO and Reed Elsevier and Deloitte. So we know that marketing is moving from art to science. And when I started my career, marketing was the arts and crafts department, and it was about colors and paper and fonts. And of course, we've evolved quite a bit to modern marketing today. And what we're seeing is that increasingly there's a group of new marketers who are using past to predict what's going to happen in the future. And we're calling this predictive marketing and selling. And it's not something that's 5 years away or 10 years away, but marketers today, just like Ryan at DocuSign, are using this technology to dramatically improve their marketing productivity and conversion rates at different stages. So let's take a look back and see, what marketing teams are doing today. So a lot of marketing and sales organizations are working really hard. So they've got marketing automation in place. They've got it integrated with their Salesforce automation. They're doing nurturing. They're doing lead scoring. They have personas. They have service level agreements in place. For example, an inside rep, may have to call an MQL within 2 hours or 4 hours. They have great marketing teams, an awesome sales team. So all of that hard work, what's the result? Well, according to Serious Decisions, 94% of your marketing qualified leads will never close. So these are the people, top of their class. They're doing all the right things, and yet 94% of what they're passing will never close, and that results in a lot of inefficiency. So here's some of the data. I just talked about 94% will never close. Some other stats, 52% of sales reps last year did not make quota, and reps are spending more than 2/3 of their time on administration and preparation, not speaking with customers. From my experience, the biggest time waster for a sales rep is not doing their T&E or time in Salesforce. It's time spent with the wrong prospect, someone who will never close. And something that Ryan's going to talk about and predictive analytics is very good at is telling you through data science which of your prospects is most likely to close, and that's where a great rep can spend a lot of time. So what to do about all these problems, this 94% of MQLs will never close and the quotas and so on. So when I was leaving Eloqua, I was looking at different kinds of businesses and seeing just a great transformation happen. I saw things like radio and cable TV and taxis just all becoming dinosaurs, and new businesses on the right were emerging, like Pandora and Netflix and Uber. So what's the pattern? What is the difference between the businesses on the left and the businesses on the right? Well, there's several things. The first is the businesses on the right are taking advantage of all the data that's available. So they're taking advantage of past history, what you've watched before. Or in the case of Uber, they know where you're located. In the case of thermostats, they know the temperature outside and inside and whether you like to sleep in a cool room or a hot room. So they're smart, they're learning, they take advantage of all the data that's available. Let me dig in a little bit to one particular business and that's Amazon. So the question I would ask you is, what does Amazon know about you? Now, most people think what Amazon knows about you is one thing, what you've bought. But in fact, Amazon knows a lot more about you. They know the things that you covet. Those are things you put in your shopping cart but have abandoned. They know things called dwell times. That's when you hover over something. They know exactly how many seconds or fractions of seconds you hover over something to look at a fabric or a color or a weave. They know how you've rated products. They know where you live, which is very important because they look at other data that talks about your income. They know what your neighbors buy, which is very, very important. They know your birthday. They know your sizes. So they know when you're losing or gaining weight before many of your friends know it because your sizes are changing. And they also can know if you're cheating on your partner. So how can little old Amazon, who is a retail service, how can they know if you're cheating on your partner? It's called pattern recognition and big data. So for example, you might buy something like this, which you've never bought before, and it's not in the size of your partner. Or just to be an equal opportunity marketer here, you may have bought this whatever it is, a World Pride Hot Leopard pattern design sexy underwear for men. And I know what you're all asking about that item. Is it available? Yes, it is in stock. And at $4.95, you know that is quality. So Amazon knows all about you, so much about you. Well, what do they do with that? Well, last year Amazon did about $90 billion in revenue. And a lot of people think that their Amazon business is all about people going to Amazon.com, but in fact a larger percentage of their business is using their predictive analytics for recommendation engines. When you get their emails saying, hey, have you thought about this book, or buying these pair of running shoes, or this tennis racket? And so in fact, last year, predictive analytics through recommendation engines at Amazon represented 35%, or over $30 billion of revenue for Amazon. So now let's talk about the marketer's world and how it's related to this explosion of data happening in the B2C world. So most marketers sort of operate looking only at the tip of the iceberg. They're looking at things that come out of their marketing automation systems and out of CRM. But those data only represent about 1% of what is knowable about a prospect. And in fact, 99% of the data is below the water level. And it's just so many things like technologies companies are using, and are they hiring, and job postings and technologies. Let me dig a little bit more and get a little bit more specific. So the things that marketers know, like are people downloading things, and web visits, and form conversions, and titles, and webinars attended, all these things that are coming out of marketing automation or CRM. But there are all these additional things that are discoverable, like the size of the company, how fast are they growing, what are they doing in the cloud, where do they operate, what kind of technologies do they use, who are their executives, are they advertising or not, what is their social presence, and thousands of other attributes. So companies today are looking at all these attributes. So what we help companies do is really pull in all that information. We have a searchlight out, and we're harvesting information from about 150 million websites every day, and we're harvesting information from about 35 private data providers like Dun & Bradstreet, LexisNexis, Experian. And we pull that data together with your internal data, and we build a model, and we tell you who's most likely to buy and why. What are the attributes that can predict that using data science? Let me just give you a couple of brief examples. The first is Juniper Networks, and Juniper is one of our customers, and they make a product called Switches and Routers. And we looked at several thousand attributes across their customer base and their prospects. And one of the attributes that jumped out as being highly predictive was, did a prospect just sign a lease to move to a new office? And what we learned is that people who signed a new lease are 20 times more likely to buy switches and routers in the next 6 months. And so what we do for Juniper is we send alerts to salespeople as soon as one of their prospects signs a new lease, and it also launches a campaign from the marketing team. Another example is Autodesk. So Autodesk sells CAD/CAM software, and they were using lead scoring, rules-based lead scoring, and it was doing okay for them. But they really didn't know which of their prospects they could call. They had the curse of abundance. They had thousands and thousands of prospects they could call, but who was most likely to buy? Well, in fact, what we learned is that a good prospect to call is someone who is hiring new design engineers with the word CAD/CAM in the job description. So what we're doing is, as I mentioned, we're harvesting information from 150 million websites every day, including Career Builder, Monster, Indeed, company websites, and we can identify companies that have job postings for design engineers where the word CAD/CAM appears, and those prospects are 10 times more likely to need Autodesk software. So here's an example of how it might work. So companies have an historic conversion rate. Let's say this is MQL to close. But in fact, using data science, we can identify segments that are much more likely to buy. So in this particular case, if you look at that green bar, that dark green bar, they're 78% more likely to convert. The light green bar is 39% more likely to convert. The average conversion rate is 10%. So you don't want to call the ones below the average. You want to focus your efforts and really call in and make sure you connect with the ones that are most likely to buy. So I think a lot of people on this call today, so here's some of the attributes. And so in this case, the segments that are to the left, you'd work by sales, and the ones in the middle aren't ready, but you could nurture, and here's some of the attributes. I think a lot of people on the call are probably using marketing automation. What we've seen from Serious Decisions is it's right now about 50 to 60% penetrated. So most mid and large marketing organizations are deploying marketing automation today, and what they're asking me is, Brian, what can we do to have the next step improvement in our performance? And what we're seeing is a lot of companies are adapting predictive marketing and selling, and right now, it's about 1 to 2% penetrated. I want to finish by just showing you this fellow here. This is Jan Dahmer, and Jan is one of the great chess masters of all time. And he was recently asked that if he had to play against a computer, what would he bring to the chess match? And Jan paused for a moment and said, I would bring a hammer, because he would love to destroy the computer. But in fact, I would encourage marketers not to bring a hammer, but to actually embrace computers and embrace the new world of predictive analytics. It's my great pleasure to introduce Ryan Schwartz, who's going to talk about an amazing success story from a great marketing organization, DocuSign. Ryan?
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everybody. Before kind of diving in to our use case here, I do want to talk a little bit about DocuSign so that all of you can understand the impact predictive analytics has had on our organization. So DocuSign is a global leader in digital transaction management and e-signature. Basically, we empower anyone to sign anything, anywhere, at any time, on virtually any device, and doing so in a secure and always-on environment. DocuSign is carrier class. That means we have 99.999% availability. We are always on. DocuSign has bank-level security, surpassing even the requirements for ISO 27001 certification. A world-class customer programs and huge partner ecosystem, and I admit, a pretty awesome product, makes DocuSign just a really fun and exciting company to work for. But because of what we do, because of what DocuSign does, it has an absolutely massive market. You're talking Fortune 500 all the way down to mom-and-pop LLCs, all of the horizontals and verticals in between, all around the globe. That is a massive market. And because of the size of our market, we have extremely high lead volume. Our database grows between 500,000 and 1 million records a month. Last quarter, we generated 135,000 net new leads. That is a lot of leads. You can imagine the impact that predictive lead scoring will have so we can more effectively prioritize those leads. But with that much volume, with 135,000 new leads a quarter, what do you think our inside sales team looks like? We call them SDRs, sales development reps. Well, with 135,000 new leads, we only had 25 inside sales reps, or SDRs as we call them. This is a huge opportunity for optimization, for ensuring that every single call the SDR makes is to somebody who's most likely to convert. This is the opportunity we saw in predictive lead scoring. So didn't you have traditional lead scoring to begin with? Well, of course. We definitely had traditional lead scoring. We had multiple models of traditional lead scoring from Eloqua. If you haven't seen the Eloqua traditional lead scoring model, it's pretty simple. You have the profile data, the explicit firmographic information. This is company size, industry, etc., title. You combine that with their engagement score, the interest they have demonstrated, and you end up with a letter and a number, usually an A through D, 1 through 4. The letter representing their explicit firmographic information, and the number representing their interest and engagement that they've demonstrated. The challenge with this is that when you're trying to score their profile, you have limited data. Let's say you're trying to score on 15 different fields. Well, very rarely will you have any record that has all 15 fields populated, which automatically kind of promotes a lower score. But let's pretend for a moment that you do have all 15 fields every single time for every single lead you generate, and you're able to effectively score on all the criteria you want to score on. If you do that, you're still only scoring on who you think you want to call. You're still not saying who wants to talk to you, who's in a position to buy, because all that information is in the cloud and not something you have naturally inside of your marketing automation system. You combine that data with these universal indicators of engagement, such as, at least for us, we had kind of these universal number of website visits, number of form submissions, number of click-throughs, and we kind of measured your engagement universally that way. But it wasn't specific to persona because it was too difficult to know how much engagement is needed per persona. So we took this limited data, you combine that with universal indicators, and it basically leads to a confidence concern by the SDR team. So instead of using our lead scoring system as the source of truth and what to prioritize by, they use it as kind of an indicator, a basis, but they use a lot of their own intuition still to determine who they should call. And this was a huge opportunity to improve that process. So then what did we need to solve this problem? Well, what we needed first was an enriched data set. We needed a massive data set, cloud data, that knew of thousands of indicators of our prospects. But the data alone isn't all that useful until you make it predictive. You have all of these indicators out there. How do you make them intelligent? So by combining them with our Salesforce and Eloqua instance and doing correlation and kind of regression analysis, they're able to detect which of these indicators are predictive into becoming customers. On top of that, we needed this data to be persona smart. We have so many personas at DocuSign, so many different buying markets and industries and horizontals. We needed the score to represent their persona so that we knew each score was indicative of the buyer and their specific journey. So then why did we choose Lattice for this? Well, we looked at a few different solutions, and to us, Lattice was just a clear leader in predictive lead scoring. They had the most sophisticated system, the biggest architecture, and the most data. This was really important to us, especially from a security perspective. DocuSign has very intense security. We've actually partnered with Lattice for over 3 months going through the security review, and we appreciate that. It takes a lot of work to get through our security, but it's incredibly important because we needed them to integrate with Eloqua and Salesforce so that we could do that regression analysis and that correlation between our data and what converts and our customer lifecycle and lead funnel into the cloud data that they have. So they were able to have the architecture and the sophistication to pass our very intensive security review. They also committed to meet our volume needs. We have big data inside of DocuSign in terms of growth, growing between 500,000 to 1 million records a month. That is a lot of data. In terms of transactions, database transactions between Eloqua and our other business applications, we have over 1 million transactions a day. We needed a system that could scale to those growth projections that we see in our future. We also needed somebody who truly understood persona selling. We consider ourselves at DocuSign to be pretty smart persona sellers. It's a core part of our business. We needed a predictive lead scoring solution that was just as sophisticated, who knew just as much about persona selling as we did, if not more. And Lattice Engines had that. So then how do we actually roll it out? Well, we started with an integration. We integrated Lattice Engines with Eloqua for all of the engagement data, all of the activities that our leads are taking inside that are tracked by marketing automation. And we integrated it with Salesforce so that we could see the progression through our customer lifecycle, the lead funnel, and what's actually closing into closed won revenue. You might think I'm missing one here. You might think I'm missing, well, where is DocuSign? Where is Lattice integrated with DocuSign? Well, we actually have DocuSign integrated with Eloquent Salesforce. So we get the the usage data out of DocuSign. And by integrating Lattice with Eloquent Salesforce, they're able to see the DocuSign usage data as well. Okay. The second step we did was we increased our scoring basically from 4 to 10. So this might seem like a small change, but it's actually pretty impactful. We have so much volume that just calling down to 1 through 4 isn't enough granularity because you have so much volume. So we increased our granularity from 0 to 4 through 0 through 10. And then we have our SDRs call down 10s first, then 9s first, then 8s first. And this actually ended up being just the right granularity for us, where we're able to call down the highest score Lattice records effectively. And this is the important one. This is the most challenging part about rolling out predictive lead scoring in your organization, in my opinion. It's converting your sales team, especially the inside sales team, the SDR team, from being intuition sellers into trusting the predictive score. This is very difficult to do. So the way we did this at DocuSign was we started off with the sales management. Sales management was included in the evaluation of Lattice engines. They were included in the model review, in the planning. They were included at the very beginning. And they committed that if we could prove by doing a pilot with a small subset of the SDR group, we did it with 5 SDRs, we could prove that their conversion was better than what the others were doing using a traditional scoring system and their intuition, and they would roll out the entire inside sales team over to the predictive lead scoring system and trusting the predictive number. So we did that. We piloted for a month with our SDR team, subset, our pilot group. We were able to show over a 30% lift in conversion by converting over to trusting the predictive Lattice score versus our traditional scoring system. With that, we rolled over the rest of the SDR team over to trusting the predictive score. Very important part. If you implement predictive lead scoring and you do not transition your SDR team or your inside sales team over to trusting that predictive number and calling down in order regardless of their intuition, it's not going to be as effective as it should be. So then how effective was it really? How successful is it really? Well, this is our opportunity distribution on our original scoring system. As you can see, not very predictive. You have C's first, then B's, then A's, and D's. So you might wonder, okay, why not just iterate? Why not just fix your original traditional scoring system? Well, I've done, in our company has done many iterations of our traditional scoring system. The problem isn't the logic. The problem is the data. The reason you have so many C's and B's is because we didn't have enough data to make them A's. You can't fix that. We tried data appending. I imagine most companies have some type of a data appending service. But it's still not enough. Not every record is going to be able to be appended. And even if the information that you have they're appended with might not be the data that you really need or wanted. So this wasn't enough for us. This is the original, not very predictive. So what did Lattice look like? Much more predictive. It's almost a perfect line. You have 10s first, and then 8s, and then 9s, and 6s, and 7s. Is there room for optimization and improvement here? Yes, but it is way more predictive in the sense of what's going to convert into closed-won customers. So then what did this result in? Well, for us, if you compared our top Eloquent scored records with our top Lattice scored records, it was a 38% increase in win rate opportunities. We also saw over a 30% increase in conversion from inquiries into SQLs by our SDR team by using the predictive score. So what does that yield in revenue? Well, for us, that was 131 times return on investment. So this number might seem kind of arbitrary, so let's dive into it real quick. There's also some stuff on the left here I want to show, but I can't because I couldn't fit it on the screen. So on the left, if you could imagine it, you see total inquiries. And you have a lifted increase from inquiries into SQL because of using the predictive score. So there's a lift in conversion from inquiry to SQL. And then actually there's another lift from SQL into customer because the SQLs we're generating are even of higher quality than usual. So there's a lift in conversion from SQL to customer. You multiply that by the average sales price, divide that by the predictive scoring cost, and we yielded 131 times return on investment. Pretty significant. But here's the big one. I have kind of a new slide that I created just for this presentation I'm really excited about. We just recently released 2 new models inside of Lattice Engines. So all of that I just showed you was on our original initial corporate model. That's this one. In our initial corporate model with Lattice Engines, we were able to predict, or Lattice I should say was able to predict, 86% of one opportunities in the top scored records. So looking at just 6 through 10, they were able to predict from 6 through 10, 86% of our one opportunities. That's pretty good. We gained a lot of value out of that with the slides I just showed you. But here's what we have now. So what we did was we split the corporate model with our real estate model. Real estate is one of our biggest verticals. And we split the predictors, made them both mutually exclusive. So we have corporate being scored entirely separate from real estate, and had a pretty big impact on the accuracy. From the corporate model, the new one we just released within the last 2 weeks, it can now identify, it can properly predict by rating a lead a 9 or 10, 84% of one opportunities. For the real estate model, it was able to predict 72% of one opportunities by scoring them an 8, 9, or 10. So what does this mean exactly? That means if you called down just 9s or 10s for corporate model, you would still achieve 84% of one opportunities, calling just 9s and 10s. For real estate model, you would achieve 72% of one opportunities just by calling 8, 9s, and 10s. That's pretty predictive, considering that you got this in the very first lead in front of the SDRs. So then what are some example predictors? Okay. You have some of the obvious ones, like the credit history. Is this company in good credit standing or bad? Good, obviously a positive predictor. Bad, negative predictor. That one I think is pretty obvious. C-level executives. I think this is an interesting one. Obviously, you can identify C-level executives without needing predictive scoring. That was a big part of our traditional scoring model. What was interesting here was what it meant. When we worked with Lattice Engines, this actually became a negative predictor for our SDRs. The reason being, C-level executives were not a great lead for SDRs to call. They were good for helping close an account, through an account executive closing business, but not from qualifying it, not from the beginning of trying to get into a business. That was a new learning for us and pretty interesting, I thought. The number of locations, again, this one's kind of obvious. The number of locations, where they're actually geographically, this was useful to us in terms of our predictive score. But the big one, the one that is so hard to get, is what else they use, what else do they have there, what other cloud services have they implemented at that company. And particularly for us, it was AppExchange. If a company is an AppExchange customer, then they're more likely to become a customer of DocuSign, because DocuSign is an AppExchange partner. We have a product on the AppExchange. So if a company already has other products in the AppExchange, that was a major predictor for us. So then what are some tips for adoption? Well, to begin, I would make sure that you have dashboards to benchmark your success. This means you have to have dashboards on your traditional scoring system so that you can prove the predictive scoring system is much more effective. If you don't have benchmarks, it's very difficult to justify the investment. It's very difficult to know whether or not it was working better. I also recommend having fields to track the original score, the current score, and the last score date. And additionally, if you have multiple models, I recommend adding a Lattice model field. You might wonder, why do you need an original score and a current score if it's supposed to be predictive? Certainly that score shouldn't really change much, just because they might have a few more engagements inside of Eloqua, or a few more fields are populated. That is 100% accurate. The point of the original score and current score is not to track the progression of the score. It's to track the improvement of the scoring from across models. So for example, the original score was populated for us when, in our original corporate model. When we released the new model, that score is updated. So now the original score remains the same. The current score is now the new score, and the model field is updated. So now we can compare how was the original score effectiveness to the current model's scoring effectiveness. This allows us to further benchmark. The third bullet, you absolutely have to transition from intuition selling into predictive selling. This is the most important part of having a successful implementation and really achieving the success you can have with predictive scoring. And last but not least, I really recommend developing your personas over time. Don't try and go out the gun and put all of your personas in there at once. It'll be very difficult to do so, and it's hard for you to really gauge whether or not it's working and to put the amount of time needed to make that successful. For example, if we didn't initially release the corporate model, we wouldn't have been able to prove that by splitting the corporate model into a corporate and real estate model would be much more effective. We also have plans to release new international models dedicated just for international support. And we're doing this over time on a cadence schedule versus all at once at the beginning. I recommend doing your rollout as well. And Brian, I'll hand it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian and Ryan. Those were a great overview of the topic and some really great real-world examples from Ryan. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right into questions. We've got some good ones coming in, and we're going to spend about 10 more minutes asking Brian and Ryan to respond to some of those. Brian, let me give this to you, and then Ryan, if you have any additional thoughts on it. But Todd had asked, does predictive scoring work at the account level, and can I score accounts in my database instead of my leads?
Yes, it works at the account level as well. So most of the data that's available is actually at the account level, not at the contact level. So you can score all of your accounts, and you can prioritize them, or you could do what Ryan does and prioritize your leads. You can do it either way. But account scoring, we're seeing more and more customers have a lot of accounts. And what we've seen is very often accounts can be zombies. That is, they've been in their database for a long time, but they haven't MQL'd or taken any action, opening an email, coming to the website, and so we're able to sort of reactivate a lot of accounts because there's been a trigger. They got funding, or they're using a certain technology or something that would indicate interest and a good fit. So yes, you can do account scoring with predictive analytics.
All right. Is account marketing and predictive account management something you guys are looking at, Ryan?
We actually do kind of a correlation of both. The scores that we get from all these are aggregated onto the account when they're converted into the account. We do that through basically a quick Apex class that does that Apex trigger. So yeah, it is something that we've already built into our Salesforce instance.
Okay, great. All right, we had a question from Chris. Brian, again, I'll start with you, and if Ryan, you have additional thoughts. How can info about the majority of web visitors to our site who remain anonymous, not the ones already in our marketing automation list, can they be predicted for follow-up as well?
Yes, they can be if they eventually are known. So for unknowns, there are a couple of different ways to handle it. You obviously apply a cookie, and at some point if they download something, you could then tie it and match it up with other data that you have on them. Or you could use any number of services that are sort of this, what people call reverse IP lookup. So if you know their IP address, you can infer their company, their revenues, location, those sorts of things. But I'd be interested in how Ryan does it, anonymous visitors.
Yeah, it's a good question. We use actually a number of vendors to help with our unknown visitors. Ones to help us do kind of nurture. We do ad nurturing for our unknown visitors across different personas on our site, and we base that off of page tagging in Eloqua. So we know the different types of personas that should hit different pages. And we use a service to help us take those people, put them into Eloqua, and do display ad nurturing to them. And as they basically respond to that process, that display ad nurturing, then they get put in as a full lead inside of Eloqua, and then they're appended with the Lattice data and sent over to the SDR team if their score is high enough.
No, great. All right, we had a question from Rhonda. Brian, again, I'll start with you. If you're using traditional lead scoring today, what is the time frame to get predictive lead scoring up and running, and what is the time frame before you start seeing results?
Well, first, hi, Rhonda. So I was watching the tweets, and Rhonda's actually someone that I used to work with at Eloqua, who's a great marketer. So most of the customers we work with have traditional lead scoring in place. Many do not. And so if you don't have lead scoring, very often predictive lead scoring can actually leapfrog it. So you don't have to go through the many months of pain to start figuring out whether a download of a white paper is 12 points and someone goes to the career page, you degrade them by 8 points or something. So you can very often leapfrog it. If someone's doing traditional lead scoring, we can sort of have the first model built within a couple of days to take a look at the predictive attributes. So what we basically do is we get your credentials from your marketing automation platform and your CRM. We pull that into our data cloud, and then we append all this additional data. That's the job postings and the technologies and the patents and all those other thousands of attributes. We run the model, and then we're able to give it back to you in just a couple of days. I will say, and I love Ryan's thoughts on this, that the most challenging part is not getting the model done and figuring out the attributes. It's actually some workflow issues of training people, and as Ryan said very eloquently, it's this mindset from intuition to predictive selling. So the actual technology can get up and running very, very quickly, but there are other behavioral changes that have to happen in the organization. So I know you saw that at DocuSign, Ryan.
Yeah, definitely. The longest part of the implementation for DocuSign was the security review, and that's just part of the DocuSign business model. Is every company that we work with has to go through a very intense security review. But beyond that, in terms of implementation, Brian's absolutely right. It doesn't take much to give them credentials. That's really pretty much all you do there. They pull in all the data from the different systems, and they start to find their learnings themselves. You can guide them on what you kind of want the filters to be. If there's certain records that you want to ignore, if you want to hone in on a certain persona, for example, like we did with real estate versus corporate, you can definitely give them all of that guidance. But they have access to all of the metadata, and their engine basically starts to identify these predictive fields automatically. When it comes to the process, that is by far the hardest part. It takes a lot of planning with the sales management team. We got over that by including the sales managers at the very beginning, making sure they were aware of the initiative. They were in as much need of it and support of it as we were in favor of implementing it. We also put in the work to have the dashboards and fields ready so that we could be able to prove its success. That was a big part of realizing its value, was making sure that we could prove how much better it performed versus our traditional system.
All right, great. All right, I'm going to try to get two more questions in quickly. This two-part question from Scott. He said it seems like data is a huge part of the value from predictive lead scoring. Do we have to have a robust lead analytics, data analytics already in place? And then are there specific industries where it works better? So Brian, if you want to take that first.
The data and the analytics are sort of in the box. So this is like a scaling issue. So every company that's doing this doesn't have to gather their data separately. We do it. As I mentioned, we're crawling and harvesting data from 150 million websites. We have 35 data partnerships with all these data providers. So we do the data piece for you. And as Ryan said, we just need your credentials for marketing automation and CRM. And then in the box is the predictive analytics. So all that's there. I will say for industries, it's less industries we're finding and more geographies. So we've had some challenges getting the data that we need in certain countries in Europe where there's privacy issues. Canada has some issues. So right now we're seeing the early adopters of predictive analytics being mostly North American, US-based companies, and then a couple of countries in Europe and some in Asia Pacific. But there's some countries where the data is just either protected or the privacy issues, and we can't get it quite as easily. But U.S. is usually a very, very strong market for this. And as far as industries go, the early adopters we're seeing are technology companies, as we saw with marketing automation. So we're seeing SaaS companies, technology companies, Valley companies. The second wave we're seeing is a lot of banks who are trying to do a lot of cross-selling. They're trying to predict which of their wealth management customers need retirement account sort of information. And we're also seeing a lot of activity with companies that have lots of SKUs, lots of products to sell. So Staples and Office Max and Dell, people that have tens of thousands of SKUs, they want to use predictive analytics to say somebody who bought this product might also want to be upsold this product. So that's another use case, companies that have lots of SKUs. But again, the technology companies are the early adopters here. Little financial services and some companies with lots of SKUs are also early adopters.
All right, good stuff. All right, I don't think we're going to get to the remaining questions, so I'll ask Brian and Ryan to follow up with everyone directly. We're right at about the 45-minute mark. I'll remind everybody to tweet some of the interesting stats and comments that were shared today, and you can do that and be eligible for our prize box. I also want to remind everyone that the next session in our series is going to be this afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific, on Lead to Revenue, how to use webinars to accelerate the buying cycle, and that will be with Mark Bornstein, Senior Director of Content with On24. So thanks again to Brian and Ryan. I thought this was a really great presentation, and today's webinar will be available on demand. Thanks, everybody, for making time. Brian, Ryan, thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.